What's up, y'all, and welcome into today's episode of Forte Catholic. I'm so glad that you found us. Liv Harrison is my co-host today. We talk about some holy stuff, which might be a surprise to some of you. We're talking about Lectio Divina, talking about dealing with tragedy. We're going to go through some scripture. We're talking about what to do in your faith whenever things feel dry or you feel far from God. This is one of our deeper episodes in a while. We hope that you guys enjoy it. If you do, please hit that subscribe button wherever you are listening to the podcast or on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Forte Catholic. We hope that you enjoy it as much as we enjoyed making it. Have fun. What's up? And welcome to Forte Catholic. I am Taylor Stroll. That is Olivia Eugene Harrison. Hello, Olivia.
Hello, Taylor.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. You just rolled back into town.
I did.
Just in time for this.
Just in time for this. Just for you.
Yeah. Where were you this time? Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego?
Basically, I was in D.C. I never get to go to D.C. And I did 0 D.C. things. You know what I mean? Like I didn't do any, presidential things or museums. So that kind of stinks.
You were there on President's Day.
I was there on President's Day. I know. And somebody asked me in England, they were like, oh, do they do a big parade with like floating presidential heads? And I was like, they don't, but they should. Like there should be like a Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade situation going on President's Day. But I think everybody's just excited to have the day off. It was packed with people, packed.
Except instead of Macy's, which is still relevant, it had to be like Sears Roebuck for all these dead presidents that no one cares about anymore.
That's right.
The Sears Roebuck Parade. We made the balloons out of concrete. They're not working too well.
That is so funny. No, it's true. And I had no idea it would be such a time to fly in. I mean, listen, you'll love this story. I drove myself to the airport to be nice, and I parked my car at like the parking spot. I fly in last night, and the line to get onto the bus to go to the parking spot to go get my own car was so congested. I called Nathan and he came and got me to drive me to my car.
Oh my gosh, Olivia. Golly.
I knew you'd hate that.
I hate it so much because I've used the parking spot. We're getting very particular right now, but I've used the parking spot multiple times. If you miss one bus or if you don't like get on one bus, there's another one coming in 2 minutes. And
Taylor,
secondarily,
I will send you pictures.
Secondarily, you could have Ubered and paid $4 to go the quarter mile and not make your husband drive for an hour and a half. You jerk. You're such a privileged jerk.
I did not ask him to. I sent him pictures and I was like, there's so many people. And then he goes, I'm only 20 minutes away. I'll come get you. I was like, seriously? And then it did not take 20 minutes. You know why? Because the entire universe was picking up people last night at the Houston airport. So it was not a good use of my time, his time, anybody's time. I didn't really call him to ask.
And now you're wasting our time. It's not a good use of this time right now. You're wasting everyone's time.
So there you go. I just wanted to give you one more reason to hate me. There you go, Taylor.
Yeah, the list keeps building and building.
I know.
But to be fair, I always love and despise you 50%. So as my hatred grows, so does my love. So you have that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You let me know when it gets uneven.
Yeah, exactly. You've been too nice to me. We got to get some more hatred in here.
I had Nathan drive me to the parking spot. Yes,
yeah,
I hate you again.
Yeah, that was rough. That was rough. We're gonna pivot here, and I'm gonna warn people that we're gonna pivot here. It was a pretty tough week for me. And usually here on the show, it's like we're talking about the joy of the gospel and fun things, and joking around, and we will do that in our second and third segment. But it was a tough week, and I tweeted about this as a prayer request, and a lot of people responded. It meant a lot to me, and I know it meant a lot to the family. But one of my former teens passed away a couple of weeks ago, and it was tough. On the one side, just knowing how tough it was for the family. She was still young, young 20s. And I spent a lot of time with her when I was her youth minister, and I spent a lot of time with her brother, who was also his youth minister. Like they were the kids that would come over after school and be like, what are you doing here? Like I work, like it wasn't like youth night. It wasn't whatever. I'm like, what? Like we had pews like in our hallway and I just walk out of my office to like, go to the chapel or go to the restroom or go to the other office or whatever. And be like, why are you sleeping in a pew in the hallway of the parish hall? So we spent a lot of time together. And so 2 weeks ago, I got the news that she had passed away. And I knew it was tragic for the family because like when I was her youth minister, her mom passed away from suicide. So we walked through that with her, and I knew it was hard for her. And she took her life too a couple weeks ago. So I mean, it was a really really tough. Just first for the family, right? Just my heart just sunk for the family because it's like they've dealt with this already,
oh my
right?
gosh.
The grandmother. The grandmother, the parents, like the siblings. I mean, just, oh man, it was incredibly difficult. And then, so that was like on the family side. And then my next thought was like, I've never, like I dealt with a lot of death as a kid. Like I lost, people in high school when I was in high school. We had, I think I've told the story before, like in one classroom, within the fall semester, we lost a student, a friend of mine. And then we lost our teacher in the same semester. I mean, like there was just a lot of death for a person.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, a lot of death for a person growing up. But
yeah.
I was literally just talking like the week before with a priest friend of mine who, when I was in LA, and there was a student at his school that miraculously is still alive because like he got in a very big car accident. And the doctors were like, he has like a 10-15% chance of living and he's fine. Right. But I was talking to the priest about a week after it happened. And he's like, I've been a priest for 10 years and I've never lost a student. Right. Like, you do funerals for, people who are older and that's kind of, like the natural circle of life, that sort of thing. But never lost a student. We were just talking about that a week before. This is the first student that I've worked with that has died. And it was pretty hard. Right. Both because she passed away, but also how, right? Like suicide is it's a difficult thing. You're sad for the person, you're sad for the family, you're sad for everybody that it affects. Like she had 2 little kids. I mean, it's just incredibly tragic. So I went to the funeral this weekend, back home, Angleton, which is the city right next to Lake Jackson where I grew up, where I was her youth minister. And I just felt like I needed to go. I felt like I needed to be there, and so I drove into town Friday night, got to hang out with my family, see my family, have dinner, see my best friend. Like it was a good time. But then Saturday morning, I went to the funeral. And it's this weird thing because it's like I was their youth minister and I was really close to both of them for the 2 years I was there. But then I left, like, and like, like maybe DM her older brother, on Instagram, maybe once a year. So it's like we hadn't incredibly kept in contact. Right. But then I go to the funeral and it was this interesting thing. I'm sure you've been to a funeral like this. A lot of times it doesn't happen in Catholic circles, but it was cool to see it in a Catholic church, really. So the funeral was at 11. Normal funeral mass. Everybody's been to I think most people listening have been to a Catholic funeral mass, right? But from 10 to 11, it was does anybody want to say something, right? And I've been to those, and I've been to one last year for somebody else who committed suicide, and it's hard. Like it's hard, right? It's hard just to hear it. It's hard for it to not be just frankly awkward and kind of difficult, and kind of making the situation worse. This was interesting because it did not make the situation worse, and it was not awkward, and it was because they did something really special. The grandmother is just a staple in our community growing up. Incredibly holy, incredibly connected to God, and I think she was kind of the person preparing all of these things. So like somebody would come up and speak. So an aunt went up and spoke, and she was like crying. It was hard, right? But then a song would play, and it was a prayerful experience, right? So somebody would share, and then they sang a song, and then somebody else would share, and then we did like a decade of the Divine Mercy Chaplet, and then somebody else shared, and then the grandmother walked up to me, and she's like, "Hey, can you lead a decade of the Rosary?" I'm like, "Sure." This completely unexpected because, like I said, I hadn't talked to this family in years, right? And she's like, "Can you lead Deck of the Rosary?" I'm like, "Sure." And she's like, "Can you also explain what the Rosary is and pick a like a thing to like one of the mysteries to reflect on and explain that a little bit. I'm like, sure. And I'm like, okay, I'll like kind of sit with it for a second and pick. She's like, we're doing it now. I'm like, oh, okay. So, so I walk up and it's one of those things where it's like, I did not plan to do anything at this funeral. Right. Because it's like most of the family doesn't know me. Like, you know, I knew that like the older brother and the grandma would appreciate me being there. That's why I went. Right. And just for some, you know, kind of prayer and closure for myself. And so I'm like, this is what the rosary is. And then we start praying. She's like, what mystery? I'm like, oh crap. I didn't, you know, I hadn't thought of it, you know? So, but got to lead the rosary and then, you know, just kind of went back to my seat and we started the funeral mass pretty much after that. And then it was just kind of a blessing. I didn't really know too many people at the funeral. And then there was like a meal after. So I went over to the meal and I sat down just randomly, right? And then I saw that the older brother, who I was close with, he didn't have anybody sitting next to him, and I got to go sit next to him.
Oh my gosh!
And we got to hug and talk, and then like what we did for 45 minutes was just laugh and reminisce, right? After a really tough day. So it was a difficult experience, but I was glad that I was there. But yeah, it was a really tough couple of days for sure. And you know, we usually avoid those kind of things here on the show, but I just kind of wanted to, well, one, share it, and two, thank everybody for their prayers. I mean, like hundreds of people commented that they were praying. It was felt. We appreciate it. But then also just kind of to open up the conversation about how there was actually some prayer and hope in that situation. So I've talked for a while now.
I mean, I think obviously you were supposed to be there for a lot of reasons. But I think also what's interesting about funerals, and especially those that are strong around suicide, is that you definitely go there to be for the grieving family, right? Because it's like, death is not easy no matter what. It's not easy if it was a long drawn out death, if it was a sudden death, if it was self-imposed death. Death is death, you know, but there's different like heaviness that comes with each kind, right? Someone who had cancer for a long time, or someone who had a illness for a long time and suffered, you know, greatly. You have this terrible feeling of, well, thank goodness they're not in pain anymore, but then you're really sad. Or if something's sudden, of course, there's all the pain that comes with that. But suicide is definitely in a whole different unique box, because I think what those of us who are left behind from suicide, you can't help but go into the constant, what if I had called? What if I had said this? What if I reached out? What if I whatever? And you become a part of the story. You know, whereas then the other deaths, you really probably couldn't have done much. You know what I mean? Like, so I think that's where suicide, in my opinion, takes it up a notch in your personal reaction to it, or, you know, experience with it, is that you do. And then you start thinking, who do I need to reach out to? You know, where am I failing as a whatever? First of all, it had zero to do with anybody else, right? Suicide is very complicated. The church recognizes that now. And, you know, mental health is a huge issue that everybody's facing now. But it is complicated, but it is also a good reflection to pause and say, okay, where can I step into other people's stories, or what do I need? You know, where am I at with what's going on with me? And I think what's interesting also is that you do go to funerals to support, but even though you were removed, Taylor, I mean, this was somebody in your life, and it sounds like, you know, you're grieving just, you know, obviously not as much as the family, but you are in grief, and to get the gifts that you got, and for you to be there for the brother, I think is just really cool. So I want to say thank you for sharing. I know that's not something that you love to do, but I think it's necessary to talk about, you know?
Yeah. I had been to a couple of funerals for suicide before, and this one was different.
Sure.
So I know, like, for me growing up, and I think a lot of people in the church understood, like, when I was growing up, and I'm sure it was the same for you, but like growing up for me, like I was taught that the church taught, like, if you commit suicide, you're going straight to hell. Was that
no
your
mass?
experience?
You can't get buried in a Catholic, like all sorts of things you would hear. Right.
Yeah. So it was hard, because that was like my understanding when a friend of mine, a teammate of mine in high school, committed suicide. I'm just like, really? Like, he was a generally good dude, went to church, had some trauma in his life, and then took his life. And I was like,
now he's in hell. Yeah.
Right,
it's like,
yeah,
what? Yeah.
So I know that, like, the understanding of mental illness being an illness. Like people can die from cancer. They can die from this
Diabetes.
disease. They can die from whatever, right?
Right.
And like now mental health being part of that. It has changed my perspective. And so this was one of the more hopeful funerals for somebody who committed suicide that I have been to, because it was reiterated over and over again. Like, she was a baptized person. She went to First Communion. She wrestled with faith. She was a person of faith. She cared. She prayed, and she struggled with mental health for a long time. It was a sickness, right? So just like the hope, right? Because it's one of those things that, like, with any funeral, like, you don't want to say at any funeral, and the church is very careful the church does not say that anyone is in hell or anyone is in heaven. The only people that the church says definitively are in heaven are canonized saints, and that process takes years after someone's funeral, right? So at the funeral, it's like a dare that we hope that this person is in heaven, that they are in a better place, right? But we don't say definitively either way. And there is not a definitive person, period. The church has not said that Hitler is in hell, right? Most likely, I mean, there's a most likely, and there's evidence. Shocked? Right? Yeah.
Yeah, but that's a good point. We don't have a process. Like, we have a process to find out who of us gets in to heaven. It's like the Academy Awards. You find out who is best actor. So we have this process for saints, but you're right. We don't have a process for and canonized for hell.
Right. Yeah.
Hitler.
Right. Yeah.
And what do you call them? I don't know. I mean, what would be the opposite of a saint?
The crowd erupts.
Yeah. Seriously. No, that's a very good point. We don't know. We don't know. Yeah. Yeah.
So
no, yeah, I'm glad that you said that about what was happening at this funeral and why, and how that it was so different. I think that's really beautiful. I think we've learned a lot about mental health and about everything, and that we don't know, and who are we to say? And the other thing, Taylor, I don't know about you, but I used to hear a lot, wow, they're really selfish. Wow, what a selfish thing to do. And that never sat well with me, because I'm thinking, to actually impose enough harm on yourself, however you do it, doesn't seem really selfish. You know what I mean? It seems pretty awful, pretty sad to get to a place where you're like, this is what I'm doing. This is my choice, like that it's a choice, like as if you're picking between, do I want cheese on my burger or do I just want a plain burger today? You know what I mean? Like we've simplified it. We want black and white, especially with death, especially with illness. People all the time ask me stuff about, being over when I lost 300 pounds. Oh, how'd you do it? Oh, okay. You got 3 seconds. Like, it's going to be an easy answer. They want something very black and white and tangible. And I get that.
You should just look him in the eye and be like, Atkins, and then walk away.
Or my favorite question is, what finally made you decide to do it? Oh, okay. Because at 458 pounds one day, I just woke up and said, well, this is no more fun.
I finally found a mirror, and I was like, golly, something's got to change. Yeah.
I just want to sit in a chair, everybody.
Right.
I mean, it was just this one decision, and that's not life. And same with death, and especially suicide. It's not like somebody was like, well, I'm feeling really selfish today. I think this ought to be fun. That's ridiculous. That it really was upsetting for a long time. So I'm very happy that the church and everybody else is starting to see, wow, this isn't selfish. This is something that must be really awful.
Yeah. And something that the church does very well is that I think society doesn't do very well, is the ability to hold two things to be true at one time, right?
I love that.
That on one hand, this is a tragedy, and yet there can still be hope. Even to your point about there's still a part of me. There's still a part of me that still believes that it is a little bit selfish, right? I think growing up, it was 100% viewed as selfish, right? Mm-hmm. But I think we can hold these two things in hand of like, this is an illness and a sickness, and yet if you do this, it's going to hurt everyone around you too, right? Mm-hmm. So we can hold those two things. Like, nobody's happy that this happened, right? It's not like everybody's free from this, Mm-hmm. We can hold multiple things at one time, right? And there's a quote that I heard actually I went to church Sunday, the day after the funeral, and there was a quote from one of the best named human beings ever, Corrie ten Boom. You might have heard of her. She said, "When a train goes through a tunnel and it gets dark, you don't throw away the ticket and jump off. You sit still and trust the engineer." and it was in the context of prayer. Like I had a thing with Father Anthony a couple episodes ago of like, I feel like prayer's not getting answered. Like when you feel darkness in prayer, or a tragedy happens, or dealing with mental illness or whatever, right? When the train goes through the tunnel and it gets dark, you don't throw away the ticket and jump off, because then where are you?
Right.
Stuck in a dark place that you can't see, and now you're lost, right? You sit still and trust the engineer. So when it comes to prayer and like dealing with the after ripples of tragedy, it meant a lot, right? It's dark right now, but I need to trust the engineer, right? I wish that she would have trusted the engineer, right? I get that it's a sickness, but I can still wish that she's still here, right?
Of course.
And then so it's just being able to hold these two things together, and it's kind of difficult, but at the same time, it's something that we can do, and something that we can wrestle with, because there's going to be, literally in this quote, like a light at the end of the tunnel at some point. We just got to trust, and it's hard, because I know multiple times when things get difficult, I'm the dummy that jumps off the train and be like, it's so dark, I want to get off, and then I'm literally stuck there, don't know how to get out, and I'll probably get hit by the next train. Like
that would happen to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, you're right. And out of the two of us, I definitely just to I know that mental health is not something that you vastly struggle with. This is not something that you've really, which is a blessing. You have had touches with it, and you have been open about, hey, I never really went through this, and now I kind of am, and I'm starting to kind of get whatever. It is different for those of us who deal with chronic illness, who deal with either mental chronic illness or physical chronic illness. I have both. And I have to say, being chronically mentally ill is vastly more difficult than anything I've ever gone through. And it is hard. And I think you make a good point. Both and can happen. And of course you wish that your friend was here, or that there was something that, what else could have happened, or could have been done, or could have been, listen, life is like a choose your own adventure, right? If a different door had been chosen, who knows? But I think you're right to use that quote for you to go, but we've got to lay that down and find peace with the truth is the truth. This is where we're at there. And here's the hardest part about death. You can't undo it. That's what I think is so hard. It's not like you could be like, okay, I got the lesson. I learned it now. Let's go back a week ago. It's hard. There's so few things that we really have so finite. And this is it. Like, that's it. She's gone. That's it. Oh gosh, it's like I can't breathe. You know what I mean? Like, it's difficult to really grasp and understand that that's it. There's nothing else. And so that concept is what gets me through a lot. Like, there will be nothing past that. Like, that's it. And thank God I've flirted with that line. And I've talked about it, but I haven't gotten to that point. And I can't imagine what that must be like to actually be there. You know what I mean? Because I've gotten close, but that's tough, And so her family definitely needs a ton of prayers, especially the children. That's a lot to carry. So I'll be praying for you, Taylor, and praying for the family. Thank you for sharing with us.
Yeah. Thanks. Tough week. So, thank you guys that have been praying, that saw my prayer request for that. If you didn't, continue prayers for the family and for me. We're all still kind of dealing with this. So don't go anywhere. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about Lectio Divina. We'll be right back. We have some exciting news here at Forte Catholic. We are growing. As many of you guys know, it has been just me since we launched full time in April of 2020, and we've just been trucking along, and there's been a lot of work for one little person, or one very large person, I guess. Well, in May, one of the contractors that has been doing some audio video editing to help me out, because there's been a lot of that, he is graduating in May, and I'm gonna hire him. But I need your help. We have enough funds to get him some hours, but I'd like to hire him part-time and eventually full-time. But we need the funds. Those of you guys that have been listening for a while know that we are a nonprofit. So here's what I need. I'm going to ask some people individually, but I thought I'd also throw it out here on the show. What we need is about $1,500 a month. That's how we make everything happen. We make the show happen, how I pay for, my salary to pay for taking care of my family, but also as we continue to grow, we're going to need some more funds, and that's where you can come in. I'm looking for 15 people to give $100 a month. It is tax deductible. It's just like tithing, giving to the church, all that sort of stuff. We'll send you a receipt every month whenever you give, but also it's super easy to set up some recurring giving. So that's 15 people at $100 a month. If you can do that, that would be great. You can do that at fortecatholic.com/donate. What if you're saying, oh, Taylor, I can't give $100 a month, but I can still help? Well, just mentally, $50 a month is 30 people. So it all adds up. We could really use your help as we continue to grow, so I can try to get my sanity back and be able to work on growing the ministry and not just editing audio and video for 50, 60 hours a week. That would be great. So help us out. If you like what we have been doing here with the show, our YouTube channel, our ministry stuff, and you want to support this type of stuff in the church, we would ask for your help there. fortecatholic.com/donate. Thanks, guys. Welcome back to Forte Catholic. I am Taylor Stroll, and that is Olivia Newton-John. Olivia.
Yes.
There's one thing that it always cracks me up, and I think I brought it up a couple of months ago, but this show is different than when I go give talks and lead retreats.
Right. Yeah.
So I think a lot of people think that when I go lead a retreat for confirmation, it's just like this show, and it is not.
That's fair. Yeah.
I could still say some jokes and that sort of thing, but it's like, I don't know, preaching about Jesus trying to obtain conversions for the Lord. It's a little different than what we're trying to do here on the show, which is more for entertainment and maybe a little bit of trying to get some conversion. So
yeah,
and that's mostly just conversion for me. That's what the people want. So, one of the things that anytime I lead a retreat, I used to just lead worship at it. Like that was the prayer experience. I'd lead worship in the morning and maybe in the afternoon, and then in the evening during adoration or whatever. And then I realized, one, a lot of parishes don't have like praise and worship. They're not used to it. So it was kind of like, why would I do something that they're not going to participate in? One, or have to teach them. And then I'm a relatively talented musician. So then they enjoy it and then they go back to their mass and it sucks. And then they're just mad. So I realized that after many, many years. It took many years for me to realize this.
Taylor, I gave the people too much.
Right. I'm too talented.
I'm so amazing.
I made you even more bored at mass than you already were.
Listen, it's a cross. It's your cross, Taylor.
It's my cross to bear as I make everyone else look bad. So
that's awesome.
But I realized that, but I also realized that like the church offers us so many different ways to pray. And some of them work better for others than they do. Like my biggest one, my favorite way to pray is praying with scripture, reading scripture, praying about it. Stuff like Lectio Divina, things like the rosary, more difficult for me. Things like praise and worship, great. Things like sitting there and silently, waiting on the Lord to say something. I'm too fidgety. Like, so there are ways.
You found your things. Yeah.
Right. So, and it's like, that's the beauty of the church is that there's something for all of us. Right.
True.
So one of the things I started doing on retreats is offering different types of prayer. So typically we'll do Lectio Divina. We'll do this like, I talked about it years ago on the show, but it's like, it's essentially the four ways that we can pray, praise, thanksgiving, confession, and then petition, right? So I'll teach them to do that in a real quick and easy way. But then Lectio Divina. Have you had much experience with Lectio?
I've had more experience during the pandemic than I did prior to. Like, I feel like right before the pandemic, that's a little close. I mean, that's a little ridiculous. I had just kind of started hearing about it. I'll say this, I did not grow up with it. I wasn't taught it. And when I was in, youth group back in 1812, we didn't have it. And I feel like it just kind of came onto the scene in the, mid 2000s. It was kind of becoming like a buzzword in the Catholic circles. Could be wrong, but all of a sudden people were doing it.
1,500 years too late, but sure. Yeah.
I meant where it was showing up in youth ministry. Because I've been in youth ministry since I was a youth. And all of a sudden they'd be like, okay, time to do Lectio Divina. And then I saw that C in the middle of the Lectio Divina. And I was like, why are they all saying an X? Like, I didn't know what it was. Does that make sense? But I would show up to retreats and they would do it. And I was like, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? So I had never heard of it until kind of before. And then during the pandemic, a lot of people started doing it online and stuff because it was easy to do between Zooming. So I know a little bit. I don't feel very rooted. I feel strong in the rosary. Grew up with that.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
but I have done it.
You're old and boring, and I've got the newfangled thing that the church
Oh, for
just
the
invented
love.
in your eyes.
I can't.
But to be fair, it wasn't. I didn't turn 50 before I learned Lectio Divina, but I hadn't heard about it until college. Same with Liturgy of the Hours. There's another one that I like teaching people because it's like Liturgy of the Hours, the official prayer of the church, not Mass. Everybody thinks it's Mass. Lectio Divina, not Lectio Divina. Liturgy of the Hours, official prayer of the church. No one's ever heard of it. So I like introducing these new things and things that are very old that are new to people, right?
Exactly. Like mom jeans.
No, I don't see any connection there at all. So I'm just
Like
gonna.
it used to be a thing and now they're a trend. Anyway. It's fine. Okay, never mind.
Warn them. So, Lectio Divina, divine reading. So it's praying with Scripture. You read a passage of Scripture, and the most typical way to do it is you read it 3 times. The first time, you're just trying to get what is the story actually saying? Just a mental understanding of what is actually happening in this story, right? The second time you read it, you pick a word or a phrase. What word or phrase is jumping out to you as you're reading this? Because we've all been we've had a similar experience at Mass, where we hear the same readings over and over again. We hear the same exact readings every Easter. We hear the same readings every 3 years. You've heard these stories before, but you're in a different place. You have different positives going on in your life. You have different negatives going on in your life. The stories hit you differently, so different pieces of it stick out to you. So this word or phrase, which one's sticking out to you today? And then pray with that word or phrase, and pray and think about why that word or phrase is sticking out to you. And then on the third reading, just essentially read, pray for a few minutes, read, pray for a few minutes. The third reading is, okay, how is this going to apply to my life? And then respond to God in prayer. So that's a kind of basic, there are fancy other Catholic words, but that's kind of a basic understanding of how to do this. And so I've been doing it at retreats. I did it on these last 2 retreats in Seattle and LA. And they go really well. I think Lectio is really helpful for us today because, one, a lot of people just struggle with what to say in prayer. I don't know what to say, I hear that I should pray, but then I go to sit down. I'm like, hey, God, maybe I'll say Our Father. Yeah.
Yeah.
But reading the Scripture, it's essentially God speaking to, it's a conversation. It's more of a conversation, right? God speaks to us through His Word. We get to ponder that, listen to that, and then, respond in kind, right? So it's more of a God talks, I talk, God talks, I talk, God talks, I talk. That sounded weirder and weirder the longer I did it. God talk, God talk, God talk, God talk, God talk, God talk.
Like a train.
Woo,
There you go, through that tunnel, Taylor.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I just jumped off the train. Oh no! So one of the stories that I've been doing this with is the parable of the sower. So we're going to do this and kind of do it we're not praying. We're doing a podcast, but we're going to kind of walk through it. I don't know if you. Yeah.
Go do something else.
You are not welcome here. Yeah. Okay.
Go help the Ukraine. Okay.
All right. Here we go. Thanks for nothing. That meant absolutely nothing. That meant less than your last comment. Okay. He spoke to them at length in parables, saying, "A sower went out to sow. And as he sowed, some seed fell on the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky ground where it had little soil. It sprang up at once because the soil was not deep. And when the sun rose, it was scorched, and it withered for lack of roots. Some seed fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked it. And some seed fell on rich soil and produced 60 and 100, 100 or 60 or 30-fold. Whoever has ears ought to hear." You've heard this story before, yes?
Yes. What?
Fairly self-explanatory. So
Yeah,
Jesus explains it to his disciples before, but I'm going to see if you can explain it pretty well. So the seed, we're applying this to the spiritual life, yes? So some seed fell on the path and birds ate it up. How is that comparable to the spiritual life?
I feel like if it's something that's shallow, something that isn't really spiritual enough, that's just kind of not really deep rooted, doesn't really take root, it's easy for somebody to come and and get, so it's just kind of surfacey,
Yeah.
like I would say like, oh, I say grace before meals. I'm super Catholic, but then you don't go to mass, you don't, whatever. So yeah, maybe grace before meals isn't going to get you through spiritually for all of life, if that's it. Do you see what I'm saying? I can't really think of a great example, but
I just
something like
pictured
that.
Bradley Cooper as Jesus ever since you said the word shallow. In the shallow.
Listen, I'm okay with Bradley Cooper looking like Jesus.
It's been Obi-Wan Kenobi for years, and now it's Bradley Cooper.
That's so funny.
Some fell
That's
on.
my interpretation. I'm not saying it's right.
Oh, I'm not either. I don't endorse anything you say on this show. Some fell on rocky ground where it had little soil. It sprang up at once because the soil was not deep, and when the sun rose, it was scorched for it, and it withered for lack of roots. What is that? What is that one like in the spiritual
To
life?
me, that feels like if you're really not at all doing any, like I feel like the rocky part is the part that sounds really interesting to me, that you're just interested in what you want to do, like a selfishness, a darkness, that you're just out sitting. Like it feels like the prodigal son when he's like, peace out, dad. I'm going to take all my stuff and go visit all the girls and spend all my money and go eat at all the restaurants. St. Augustine, that kind of a thing. Like, I feel like you're just like, whatevs. I feel like you're just not even into it. That's how I always heard it.
For me, it's the retreat high. So where it's like, it's because the first one is like the seeds don't even get planted, right? The birds come in and do it. So for me, it's like these got planted, but they're in rocky soil. They're not really planted. So, after a couple of days, it wears off. It's the retreat high. You're like, I'm super into Jesus, and then you're doing drugs on the next Friday. That sort of thing.
That's fair.
Some seed fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked it, which is funny to me because I picture like they become animated, and like I picture like an asparagus being choked. Oh no!
Yeah. I feel like that's probably like geez. I mean, like, I kind of feel like that's like people get very lost in like new agey kind of stuff, like thorns that like, this isn't actual spirituality. This isn't actual, atheism or, things like that. Like, but they subscribe to it. Does that make sense? That they're like, oh, this is it. I'm going to go in with the moon and the wolf and the whatever. That's how I always kind of.
That's interesting because I don't think you're wrong. I think it's just a very particular. I think this one can get pretty personal because I think the quote unquote thorns for us are all very different. True. Maybe you're tempted to go new agey. For me, it's like just distractions and busyness and the rest of life just kind of choking out faith. And then finally, the rich soil. That one's pretty obvious.
What does that one mean?
Deep faith. So. So like that's kind of the first part of Lectio Divina, just reading it, trying to understand what's actually happening in the story. What is Jesus actually saying? The second one is the word or phrase. And the way that we're going to do this for the show today is which place do you think you find yourself in right now? Because I think, honestly, one of the reflections I had when I was reading this the other day is like, I think I've been in all of these within the last 6 months, like depending on the day.
Can your seed move? Like, can it like be blown up by the wind and move to the next plot?
Yep,
and like now I'm in the rocky
pollination.
Plot.
Yes.
It floats up again. I mean, yeah, geez. I mean, Taylor, probably this week I've gone in between, you know what I mean? Like multiple ones. I do not, and I know that you probably share this with me.
This is going to be the hardest part of Lectio Divina. You have to pick one word or phrase to focus on, Olivia.
I know, I understand. But I was going to say, I do not feel like I'm a person that stays in one, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? And I wish I was in the rich soil. Probably right now, with your definition of the rocky one, I would say probably there. That's probably where I'm at.
Yeah, me too. So it's like the other things coming up to no, sorry. Mine's the thorns.
You're the thorns.
The thorns.
I'm with your rocky one though, not my rocky one. Yours.
Shout out to Rocky McCormick. You're
in the thorns. Okay, that's fair.
To where like just it's not like I'm in a bad place in my faith. Things are going well at the parish. It's not like I'm in a bad place at all. It's just like there's a lot of other stuff coming up to like take my attention, take my time. Even just tiredness, busyness, just being exhausted, is kind of where I'm at. So, the third part for Lectio is, hopefully you have some actual more time to pray about it. We're not going to pause because that's bad at podcasting, but, the takeaway for you after you've read the story, you and I have talked about it. If you're doing Lectio, you've prayed about it. What's the takeaway from hearing the story where you're like, today or this week, I'm going to do this?
Well, I was doing really well with the Father Mike Schmidt's Bible in a Year podcast.
We don't talk about that podcast here.
Okay. Nathan, my husband, and I would listen. And I'm not someone who sits down with the Bible and who does scripture. Like, that's not how I was taught to encounter Christ. And it's something that I actually love. But it seems like you stressed me out saying that you do this, because my first thought is, how do you know what to read? Like, that's the first thing that stresses me out. And then a lot of people say, well, I just read the readings for the day. And
randomly in the New Testament. Open up randomly in the New Testament.
Some people do random, some people do the things for the day. Like, it stresses me out. So the Father Mike thing, I'm not promoting the podcast. I'm just saying
he does not need any help. Yeah.
He does. I know, but it's already chosen for me. Does that make sense? That's what was so attractive, and it's listening.
I tell you what, that's not what was attractive about that podcast.
They're not stupid, this Catholic Church, finding the hottest priest out there to do it. So I'd like to get back. Thank you, because I actually had kind of forgotten that I wasn't doing it. Does that make sense? Have you ever done that, where you were doing something really consistently, and then when it goes away, sometimes you don't even realize? Like, sometimes I know I'm avoiding something, and then sometimes, like you today, I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't done the podcast. I totally forgot. So thank you, Taylor.
Yeah.
That's my takeaway.
The thing that I realized that I need to cut out of my life as a distraction is you, actually. So you're actually not going to come back for the final segment. That's my takeaway from this. You're the thorn choking me. Leave me alone.
Can't say something nice. He can't say something nice. We can't have nice things.
As my hatred grows, as does my love. I love that, because that means I can say whatever I want now. It's the greatest. It might be the greatest tool I've ever created, other than my son.
That was it. That's hilarious. Oh my gosh, I love it. So, what is your takeaway for real?
I think for me, it's the like, honestly, I think it's happening naturally, because like I traveled 3 weekends in a row now. So
yeah,
I think a lot of the thorns was just busyness and stuff to do. So I think, one, I've been thinking a lot about like family stuff, like being able to spend time with family, but then also like I want to get back to like doing my devotionals, like my scriptural devotionals, and praying with scripture again. So that's what we think. Well, try it out. It really does help. Like you know, the church actually says that all of our prayers should be accompanied with scripture, right? So, you know, we have the Mass, obviously, Lectio Divina, even the Rosary is, you know,
the Rosary.
You're meditating on stuff from scripture. So, yeah, try it out.
And Lectio can be single. I wanted to point this out. Can be in a group, but you can also do it by yourself. If you want to.
Thanks for that. I appreciate that. You've been on this show for 3 years, and you have 8 podcasts on your own. You can't tell when the host is trying to wrap up the segment.
I know, but that's why I said it really fast.
No, you cut me off. Go away. I'm so tired of you. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Guys, we did something that everyone's been telling us not to do. We talked about Bruno. We just did a Catholic Perspective series on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Forte Catholic. If you're not subscribed yet, you need to, and this might be the video to do it. I talked to Mari Pablo, Shannon Lass, Dr. Hector Weir about Encanto and the spiritual impact, the cultural impact, the personal impact on all these 3 great people that I'd never gotten to interview before. So it was an absolute blast. We've got stuff for Encanto. We've got other stuff from Disney Plus, Star Wars, and Marvel. We've also got this show, you know, every week in video. We've got talks. We've got music. Go subscribe today. We are getting closer and closer and closer to getting those 1,000 subscribers so we can become partners on YouTube. We've gotten like 100 new ones this month. So thank you for that. If you haven't subscribed yet, do it. YouTube.com/Forte Catholic and check out that Encanto video. Welcome back to Forte Catholic. I am Taylor Schroll. You know what? I forgot to share a very funny story. I think you will like this story. You ready for this?
Yeah, am I here in the 3rd segment? I'm not sure. I don't remember. You said I wasn't in this one.
I mean, the amount of times we fire each other is impeccable. Yes,
I'm ready.
My middle daughter, Magdalene Marie, sweet Maggie. She is the sweetest of the children. She's so sweet. She never does anything wrong. And like, it's not just at home. Like, she's just a sweetheart.
She's
everywhere.
A doll.
Like with everybody, right? So we got a very fun email last week, and it started with incident with Maggie at school. Let me see if I can.
Do you have it?
I do. I'm gonna actually read it because I've been telling the story, but
it's better if you read it.
It's even better if I read it. Let me find it. Where's this thing at?
It's gonna go next to her like perfect attendance award, and Taylor would be the father that would print it out and like frame this because Maggie is such a sweet. She's also snuggly. She's very like she's just warm. She's just a warm kid.
Recess incident. Hi. This is from my first grade sweet daughter's teacher. I'm emailing you about an incident that happened at recess today. Both first grade classes were enjoying cupcakes outside when I heard Maggie say to a friend, "You sit your ass down right here, and then I'll sit my ass down right here."
Oh my gosh.
Like, not cussing anybody out, just so sweet. You sit your ass down right here. I'll sit my ass down right here.
My gosh, because all you sent me in a text was Maggie used the word ass at school, and I thought, oh, she's probably like, stop being an ass, or like you're being and that is the sweetest, most innocent way to use that word. Oh, did you just
the teacher continues. It was one of my proudest parenting moments, and I'll tell you why.
Kidding.
I was very shocked when I heard this from her, as it's not typical behavior or typical language that I hear Maggie use. I asked her if she knew it was a bad word. She said no.
Oh, baby.
I explained that we should not use that word. It's bad to use with our friends or at all. She did mention that she heard it from the show The Masked Singer that she says she watches at home, because we as a family watch The Masked Singer. It is a family show, but once an episode, Nick Cannon, who's been hosting everything. It's such a fun show.
Life.
We love it. It's one of the things that we do together as a family.
Oh, that's cute.
And he looks up at Ken Jeong once an episode. Hilarious comedian.
I love Ken.
So funny. He looks up at Ken because Ken is the worst host of the. He's the worst at playing Masked Singer. He's hilarious though. He helps carry the show comedically. He's not good at guessing who the Masked Singers are.
He's the worst. Yeah.
So he gets up and does these soliloquies. It's like you would sing, and he'd be like, that's probably Abraham Lincoln. It's like, no, he's dead, and that's a woman. Like, he's so bad at the game. So he just goes on these long soliloquies, and Nick, once an episode, looks up at Ken and says, "Ken, sit your ass down." So, and what do we do as a family every time that happens? We laugh with all of the crowd.
Sure.
It's funny.
It is funny.
It's a tradition of the show. We like it. But, so she heard it, and it was a nice thing between friends because those two guys love each other. So she said it between her friends. And I was mad at her 0%. I love that kid so much. It was so funny. One of the greatest things that's ever happened. And I don't think that's how the teacher wanted me to respond to that email. But I am just so proud of her. She's so sweet. She's the best.
She wasn't wrong. I mean, it is a bad word, but I think it's a bad word if you say it badly, especially ass. Like, I mean, that can be a donkey too. It's like,
it's in the Bible.
It's in the Bible. And she wasn't like saying it with malice or intent. And I think our words have tremendous weight, but I think it definitely has to do with the intention and and she had the sweetest intent. She's like, sit your ass down. Not even like sit your ass down. Like, she was like, sit your ass down. I'll sit my ass. She included herself.
She's so sweet. It made me so happy.
That is so sweet. I love that story. That's awesome.
So, I was reminiscing a couple of weeks ago, and it was not when I was in first grade and cussing somebody out, because I probably did it with a little bit more malice than she did.
You're not Maggie.
Yeah, exactly. Not at all. She's her mother. She's her mother's daughter for sure.
Yeah,
the other two are mine.
For sure.
So, I was reminiscing to a time when I was in like junior high. It was probably early high school, actually. I was doing something. This will surprise people. I do this once every few months just for kicks and giggles, and to try to be a better person. It's one of the rare things that I do. Once every month or two, I turn on local Christian radio and listen to the songs, the same 8 songs that they play over and over again. It's like I need to connect with God. I'm busy. I'm driving. Let's have a little worship session here in the car, right? Shocking, I know that I would
That's
try
shocking.
or
I'm
care
shocked.
or listen. But the joke is that they play the same 8 songs and they're all 10 to 15 years old, right? But then I was listening to it, and it was like, they're playing I Can Only Imagine every other song for 20 minutes or whatever. But I've been doing this for about a year now, where I kind of check in every month or two or whatever, and maybe on the way to church, that sort of thing. I always say, we're running late, we're gonna miss the opening hymn, so we just turn on K-Love and call it a day. So I was listening, and let's see if you remember this song, because this took me back. Take this world from me, I don't need it anymore. I am finally free, my heart is spoken for. Nothing? Oh, no. And I praise you.
I don't know that one.
Oh, and I worship you. You don't know that one? So,
I don't.
So here's the thing. Right when I started getting into my faith was early high school. And I got placed into the worship band very quickly. That was weird. They're like, hey, let's get this athlete who cusses worse than his future daughter does, and let's have him be the lead singer for this worship team. It's one of the songs that we did.
Okay.
And I tell you, it's the weirdest thing, because like you said, you were shocked when you heard that I was doing this.
I'm shocked.
I got goosebumps in the car driving by myself, listening to this song, because this song connected back to like my early faith. And I was like,
that's cute. Yeah.
I was like, man, it brought me back to a time that I was holy and innocent and loving, So I am in the car listening to the song that was probably released 20 years ago.
Right.
And, it hit me. And it's like, yeah, the words of the song are good. Covered by your love divine, child of the risen Lord. To hear you, God, say that this one's mine, my heart is spoken for. It's like, God, we are God's, essentially, whether we like it or not, like he's claimed us and all this stuff. But it wasn't really like the content of the song. The whole reason that I connected back was that it brought me back to that place. It brought me back to being a young teenager, excited about faith, excited about life. And I'm the opposite of those things now. So it brought me back to a very special place. And I just think that the power of nostalgia is strong. But also, in Revelation, it says, return to your first love. Right? It's not talking about like don't leave your husband or wife and go back to your high school sweetheart. Well, for you, it's the same person. But for me, it's not go back to that girl that you dated, in high school. But it's like return to where you first fell in love, right? Mm-hmm. Which is like a romantic thing to do in a relationship, right? Like, oh, this is where we had our first date, or this is where we had our first anniversary, or whatever, right? But when it comes to faith, it is recommended by the Lord and by a lot of spiritual leaders, if you're struggling in faith, to go back to things that have worked in the past, or moments from the past, and pray with those. That. And it was really special. So have you had a moment like that where you're like just completely blindsided by God with something spiritually from your past?
Oh, yeah. No, I think you're right. And I think it's interesting what you said about it being, especially with music. Bebo Norman does that for me. Do you remember Bebo Norman?
I do remember Bebo. What a name, huh? What were his hits?
Is that guy even Walk Down This Mountain? Do you remember that song? So I wish I could sing like you. But we used to play it at the end of every retreat that we would staff, and we would play it. We would blast it, and it's a whole staff.
I am nothing without you.
I love Bebo. God, I love that guy. But every time I hear Bebo Norman, but especially Walk Down This Mountain, it brings me right back. And I was just staffing a high school retreat a couple of weekends ago. And there was so much that kept bringing me back, Taylor. I mean, like getting in the bunk beds, like getting in the, just the whole retreat. We were at Choye, which means something.
Oh, remember when I didn't have a mansion? This is nice.
Stop. You're the worst. Just all the things like having to, like just the glasses or just all of it. We had the affirmation bags we made. We did all the things like we had the kids write on flash paper. We did a faith walk. Like, that entire weekend was like one big trigger. It's like, golly. But doing the worship in the morning and the games, I hadn't played some of the, because we had COVID. So, and before this, I was doing youth ministry constantly. So like you forget, even though it's so much of your everyday, those of us who still do ministry in this way, it was funny. It was actually, I have to be honest, Taylor, it was kind of hard because there were so many people not there. It kind of reminded me, you're going to think I'm so dramatic, and I know, but it reminds me of the Avengers, or when in Infinity Wars or whatever, like when half the people are there and half the people aren't there or whatever. Like it felt like ghosts were there because the last time I was at Choye, there were a bunch of people that were doing this work with me. And at this time, there were only 3 of us. And we kind of had moments where we were like, this is kind of sad. Like we miss our friends. So I don't know if it made it sad for you, but I wasn't prepared, I guess. So that's definitely something that I need to sit with that more, actually, now that you're bringing this up.
You're welcome. This is our spiritual episode.
Thanks, Taylor. You're my
this,
spiritual director.
This is the one that we planned for Allison. Those are usually the holy episodes. And then I didn't have any other notes, so you're stuck with the holy episode.
Jeez. Allison, the holy convert. I know.
Exactly. Usually I bring her my problems and she brings me answers. You're just like, I know, Taylor, I'm in a worse place. I'm like, oh, this is actually helpful for my spiritual life too. But it just reminded me a lot that a healthy spiritual practice is like, especially if you're struggling in faith, or things are just kind of dry, you're not really excited about it. Like, what were the things that excited you about faith, but then also going back to those moments and praying with those moments, or like if there was a song that meant a lot to you, go listen to it and pray with that.
That's brilliant, actually. Yeah, I love that.
Even just like, I don't feel like God loves me right now. Go back to a moment where you felt God's love and be like, oh, well, you have to make a decision. Was that moment real, or is this moment, are you being dumb in this moment? You have to make the choice and pray with those things. So I heard a priest once talk about, he compared it to David and how David went and collected 5 pebbles for battle and ended up only using 1. But he's like, keep 5 things in your back pocket at all time. 5 spiritual moments where you felt incredibly connected to God. Some people are like, I only have 3. Okay, well then you have 3 pebbles. It still works,
like, this isn't really a math problem, everybody.
You don't actually have to fight a giant. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
But to keep like the 5 moments, maybe it was your confirmation, or a moment in high school, or your wedding day, or a retreat or something like that, to keep those 5 moments in, to where if you are feeling spiritually down or dry, or like, where's God? Why doesn't he listen to me? Does he even answer prayers? You can go back to, oh, I knew God was here and he answered a prayer here. So, it doesn't help, you might not still know what's going on right now, but it could help you be, maybe you won't jump off the train like we talked about earlier.
Jeez. God. This is a lantern in your dark tunnel. How about that?
Exactly. All aboard.
Using gas.
Yeah.
Like when I was little and I had to go and light the flame. I'm kidding. We didn't. Taylor likes to pretend.
I thought I was learning something about history.
I can't right now. We used torches. That's what we were using back in the day. That would have been cool though. No, I think that's really great. And now actually, God, Taylor, sorry that I'm not as enlightened as Allison, but I'm over here saying thank you. I'm now going to go do that. I'm going to go find 5 things.
What a rare day. Taylor's talking about his feelings and holy stuff. Maybe this is Taylor at the retreat. Who knows? I wanted to give you all the experience. I'm tired of people just thinking I'm a clown. I can do real Jesus things.
This actually was a pitch for Taylor. If you'd like to book Taylor for one of your talks and retreats,
I can be a clown, or I can be, the talkie person. Yep. Yep. I don't know. I couldn't figure out what they were called.
And he can sit his ass down.
Right, exactly. That's it for us today. I'll be back next week. See ya. Thank you guys for watching and listening today. We hope that you enjoyed it. If you want to stay connected with us throughout the week, everything that we do is at ForteCatholic.com. Also at Taylor Schroll on Instagram, at Forte Catholic on Twitter and Facebook. We'd love to hear from you guys. Things that you love about the show, things you hate about the show is mostly what we hear. So, be nice, I guess. But if there's something that you want to hear on the show, let us know. We're always looking for topic ideas. We will see you soon. Adios.